While the Boston Red Sox may be done making roster moves before spring training, the roster still feels like it's one strong piece away.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate, and currently the host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And you want to know the best part? It's all free. So make sure that you tune in because Locked On is here for you every single day. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the show. Pitchers and catchers officially reported yesterday to spring training. It is really exciting to think about the fact that baseball season is right around the corner. What does baseball season mean? Hopefully warmer weather. So we are hopefully turning the tide. I'll be down at spring training here in just a few short weeks. Really looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing some of the guys out there, see how they perform. I'll definitely be giving some spring training updates along the way while I'm down there. But most importantly, if you are going to be down there at the end of February, please let me know. We'll definitely have to link up. But as we think about where this Red Sox team is at going into spring training and the fact that they feel like a team that may be set to go, it still feels like they are one big significant piece away from being a true World Series contender. And on today's show, I'm going to be diving into the 40-man roster, previewing who they have and what the 40-man roster looks like in honor of spring training officially kicking off, and kind of seeing where they're at and who we feel like might step up, who might not step up, and what we feel like they're missing. So one of the biggest storylines from this offseason on the good side of things is the strength of the starting pitching. What Craig Breslow and company really did to improve the starting rotation over the course of this offseason is definitely something that is worth noting. And that's one of the biggest areas that I would say is going to be a strength for this Boston Red Sox team going into 2026. They have a rotation full of guys who can be very, very dangerous. Now, when it comes to the starting pitching, it's most likely going to be Garrett Crochet as the #1 starter, Ranger Suarez as the #2, Sonny Gray as the #3, Brayan Bello as the #4, and then the #5 spot is where it gets interesting because to me, Johan Oviedo feels like a guy that they would slot into that #5 role. It doesn't, to me, feel like they would trade for a guy like that if they didn't have the intention of throwing him in the starting rotation. However, they also have other options between Kutter Crawford, Patrick Sandoval, Connelly Early, and Payton Tolle, who all could be in the mix as well for that #5 spot in the rotation. So a lot of that is going to depend on spring training, how well people perform, and what the Red Sox are feeling come opening day. But to me, it feels like Crochet, Suarez, Gray, Bello, and Oviedo are going to be the 5. And then when it comes to guys like Kutter Crawford and Patrick Sandoval, they could be guys that the Red Sox maybe want to ease back into things since they were both hurt for the whole 2025 season. So maybe they have him pitch in long relief. In the case of Kutter Crawford, Patrick Sandoval, in his case, maybe he's a guy who they pitch in long relief, or they maybe try to trade him still. The offseason still technically is not over. Spring training is right around the corner, but still a little bit of time to make another move if they wanted to try to continue to improve the roster. Maybe Patrick Sandoval is somebody they consider trading. But if he's still here, then he's somebody that might be in that mix for a starting role, but it's good to have him around as a relief option if not. Connelly Early and Payton Tolle, this is where that gets interesting when it comes to the starting pitching because they both were called up in 2025 due to injuries in the rotation, and they both had the opportunity to make splashes, and they both certainly did make that splash in their major league debuts. They both made quite the reputation for themselves at the major league level in a good way, really showcasing their potential and ability to succeed at that highest level. Now, the Red Sox are really high on both of these pitchers. They really like them. They like the idea of them continuing to develop. And now that they have traded Kyle Harrison, it feels likely that they see these guys as, if not right now, then at least down the road, being guys who get reps in the rotation or in the pen. Now, my guess would be that if the Red Sox feel like they have enough options, those two would start the season in AAA, continue to develop at that level, and then if the opportunity arises again, for example, if a starter gets hurt, one of them would probably be the next man up type of thing to come in and pitch in the rotation. So I could see that happening because they both are still so young. They're both still continuing to develop. So if that were to be the case, it would allow them both to continue to hone in on their secondary pitches and continue to showcase that they have the ability to pitch at a high level. So you have all of those pitchers in the pitching mix right now when it comes to potentially where the starting rotation could be going into the 2026 season. Now, it's hard for me to say for sure if I have a preference on Payton Tolle versus Connelly early, for example, because we really haven't seen a large sample size for either of them. I think they have different strengths and different weaknesses that they could bring to the table. When it comes to the secondary pitches, Connelly early is definitely further along than Payton Tolle in that regard, but Payton Tolle's raw ability feels like it makes his ceiling rather a little bit higher than it does in the sake of early. So I think we need to see more from both of those guys. And this really speaks to the testament of the fact that the Red Sox are really valuing their pitching development, because they have talked about multiple times over the last really year or so about how they really believe in the group of people that they've brought in from the organization top to bottom to help on the pitching side, because the Red Sox overall as an organization have not been the best at developing pitching. And now they really worked hard to bring in the right set of people that they feel are going to be guys who are going to help maximize these pitchers' game at any level of the organization. So with where the Red Sox are at now, I wouldn't be surprised if they really just let Connelly early and Payton Tolle fly, because they want to see that their pitching development is working. They want to be able to develop homegrown pitching talent. And that's why, to me, it feels like they weren't really interested in moving one of those guys, because not only do they feel like they're the two players on the pitching side from their system who have the most potential in the future to be key assets to the lineup, but also the fact that they both are pitchers who have gotten that taste of being in the majors. So the Red Sox are saying, okay, it's better for us to bank on these guys continuing to develop into permanent rotation fixtures as opposed to other players who might still be in the organization that are at a lower level that haven't gotten that taste of Major League Baseball yet. So that, to me, is why they moved on from other pitching options this offseason as opposed to moving on from those two, because to me, they really believe in those two. But the question becomes, where are they going to pitch in 2026? To me, they're starting the season in AAA. And to me, Cutter Crawford and Patrick Sandoval are going to kind of be platoon bullpen options that maybe get used as a starter if they want to give somebody an off day or if they're hurt. For example, this is where a spot starter could come into play. Like Garrett Crochet, for example, in 2025, they were limiting his workload a little bit. They would have him miss starts here and there so that he could be healthy later on in the season. So if they want to do something similar this year, then maybe they have a Sandoval or a Crawford type big spot starts. Now, that being said, Cutter Crawford could come out of spring training and pitch significantly better than a guy like Brayan Bello or Johan Oviedo. It's hard to really say. If Cutter Crawford looks stellar out of spring, they might give him a shot in the starting rotation. So it's hard to know exactly how the rotation is going to really pan out until you see these guys and how they perform during spring training. But that is the general makeup of who could be fighting for a starting spot going into 2026. And coming up, what does the bullpen look like heading into this season? Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. That's what I like about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Indeed is a great way to make sure you're hiring the right candidates. And thank you so much for tuning into Locked On Red Sox and making it your first listen of every single day, and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Be sure to check out our Everydayer Club if you listen all the time and want to enhance your listening. Go to LockedOnRedSox.supercast.com for all the perks, which includes a members-only Discord channel that's only for listeners of this show, plus an ad-free audio version of every future episode of Locked On Red Sox on any podcast platform. So make sure you check that out as well. Well, spring training is officially right around the corner. Pitchers and catchers have all arrived down in Fort Myers. I saw some great videos on Twitter yesterday of the pitchers, and some of the position players are also there as well. But it's really exciting because it just indicates baseball is almost here. And while there are still some questions that remain about the Red Sox roster, primarily who's going to play where and how they're going to navigate certain position groups, it's exciting to think about this upcoming season. I think there's a lot to be excited about with this roster. Lots of players we're really looking forward to seeing going into 2026. And the biggest thing to me is going to be consistency and guys staying healthy. Definitely going to need consistent, strong efforts and consistently deep outings from the starting pitching so that we don't fatigue the bullpen early. We're going to need consistent performances at the plate, and just a lot of guys who are going to have to step up. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how those guys step up. And as we continue to go over the 40-man roster and the pitching breakdown of where the Red Sox are at. So we already talked about the starters, but from a bullpen perspective, they have lefty Aroldis Chapman in the mix. Obviously was one of the best closers in baseball last year. Hopefully he's able to repeat that in 2026. I do have some concerns about Chapman that I've talked about on the podcast before, is whether or not he's going to be able to have as effective of a season as he had in 2025. I do worry about that a little bit because he's only getting older, and is he going to be able to stay healthy and be able to contribute at that strong of a level out of the pen? Now, that being said, they might make Chapman the closer to start the season because of how good he was last year. And if he starts to struggle, they could always move him into more of a setup type of role, which is a role he has been in during certain aspects of his career before. So if they move Chapman into the setup role, they do have right-handed pitcher Garrett Whitlock, who could slide into that closing role seamlessly because he's always been a late inning setup type of pitcher, comes in a lot of high leverage spots, and has absolutely excelled in this Red Sox bullpen. So while it's looking right now like Whitlock would be the 8th inning guy to go to Chapman in the 9th, that could switch. They don't have to be locked into anything. And if Chapman is struggling in that closing role, they could switch things up a little bit. They also have right-handed pitcher Justin Slayton, who could also be one of those later inning high leverage guys. He, to me, has to stay healthy. That's the biggest key for him. He has battled some injuries over the last couple seasons, and that's a huge loss to the pen when he goes down. So I'm really excited to see a healthy Justin Slayton, because he definitely deserves high leverage spots in 2026, if so. So really looking forward to him. Left-handed pitcher Giovanni Moran, also still part of the Red Sox bullpen. Not a lot of a sample size really to work with for him, but he does create some versatility in that pen that's really right-handed heavy right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he can contribute and what type of role he could be in, but not ready to definitively say he should be a high leverage arm out of the pen. Right-handed pitcher Greg Weisser obviously was one of the more reliable relievers for the Red Sox in 2025, but he definitely had his struggles and did show some inconsistency. So I'm going to be looking to see a little bit more consistency from him going into this upcoming season, but he's not a high leverage arm to me. He's a guy who has to pitch more, maybe in the 5th or 6th inning if the starter gets pulled, if the Red Sox have a big lead or if they're not winning. Don't really put him into those 1-run games in the 6th or 7th inning. Weisser, to me, just doesn't really fit that mold of a guy who should be in that role, but I am looking for hopefully big things from him going into this season. Zach Kelly, also a right-handed pitcher. He'll be in the mix too. Has battled some injuries over the course of his career too, but had a solid season last year. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how he can carry that over into this season, because I know the Red Sox really believe in him, and he does have a strong ability to be able to strike guys out. So I'm just looking forward to seeing how he can carry that over into 2026 and just being more consistent, because similar to Greg Weisser, he had some ups, but he also had some downs. So hoping that can change. Cutter Crawford, Patrick Sandoval, obviously both in the mix potentially too, out of the bullpen. There's also Ryan Watson, who's a right-handed pitcher that the Red Sox essentially got in the Rule 5 draft. So he was originally drafted in the 39th round of the 2016 draft by the Dodgers, and then he was selected by the Athletics in the Rule 5 draft and traded to Boston for Justin Reamer. So that was just a Rule 5 draft day swap, and the Red Sox really like him. They're really excited about him. He checks a lot of boxes that the Red Sox look for in a pitching profile. Definitely has the chance to make the team as a reliever, but no guarantees there. He's going to have to prove himself in spring training. He has elite extension, low release height, and a solid fastball that can definitely play, paired with 2 breaking balls that can also miss bats. So this is a guy who has a strong arsenal in the mix. The Red Sox definitely like the potential there. They just have to see what he can do during spring training. But if he pitches really well during the spring, he has a chance to be a guy that they rely on out of the bullpen as well. So it'll be interesting to me to see what he can do come these next few weeks here and see if he's a guy who can crack the roster. There's also Kyle Keller, who signed a minor league contract with the Red Sox this month. And that contract includes an invite to spring training. He's a 32-year-old right-hander who previously made a Major League Baseball for the Marlins, Angels, and Pirates and spent 4 seasons in Japan's NPB. So those are the teams that he previously played for. He's kind of been around a few different teams. He's a veteran, obviously on a minor league deal. So it's a non-roster deal with a potential $1.9 million salary if he makes the roster. He was originally an 18th round pick by the Marlins in 2015 and has appeared in 44 MLB games with a 4.91 ERA. He's 6'4" and weighs 205 pounds. He is expected to potentially compete for one of those bullpen spots, but this is notable because since he's not a lock, he's another guy who potentially could be in the mix, but that was a big storyline of this Red Sox offseason, was trying to just fill their team with options and get guys into the fold who could potentially compete for a spot that they don't really know if it's a guaranteed thing that they're going to perform well at the highest level, but that's why they didn't want to lock themselves into anything early. They wanted to just bring in players who could make an impactful difference potentially at the major league level if they perform well in the spring. So that's kind of where the Red Sox are at when it comes to this 40-man roster and who's on it and who's not. The reason you bring in a guy like Keller is because you're taking a flyer on him. If he ends up pitching really well, he could be a guy that cracks the roster, and there you have another reliable reliever. So that's another interesting pitcher to throw in the mix there. So also from a pitching perspective, they also have Jake Bennett, who's a pitcher that I'm really intrigued by too. He was traded to the Red Sox by the Nationals in exchange for Luis Perales on December 15th. And then Bennett slotted in as the Red Sox number 7 prospect. So it was essentially a prospect for prospect swap. Obviously, the Nationals liked something about Perales. The Red Sox liked something about Bennett. So they said, okay, cool. He's a 25-year-old pitcher, and he's the exact type of prospect that Breslow has targeted during his tenure because of his size in particular. He's essentially a guy that fits that mold because over that span, the Red Sox have selected 28 pitchers with an average height and weight of 6'4", 215 pounds in the time span that I'm referring to of 2 drafts that Craig Breslow has been with the Red Sox organization. So he fits that as well. And so that'll be interesting to see because he's 6'6" at 234 pounds. So he fits that mold. And also with his extension statistic essentially measures how far from the rubber the pitcher releases the pitch. So the greater the extension, the more uncomfortable the at bat. So picture this, you're facing a big league arm on a little league diamond. 95 miles per hour would feel a lot faster coming in from 46 feet. So pitchers with elite extension create this same effect, and Bennett fits that similar model. So that's another thing that they really like about him. He averaged 7.02 feet of extension in the fall league, a mark that would rank in the 93rd percentile among major league pitchers in 2025. There are dozens of other factors that impact player success, but his extension is comparable to that of Phillies left-hander Christopher Sanchez. So that's promising. And they also just really like how polished he is as a pitcher. He has electric stuff and he doesn't issue a lot of walks. So his whiff and strikeout rates are very good for a prospect. So they really like guys who can generate swings and misses. So that's another thing about Jake Bennett that they really like. So overall, they like his profile. He's a guy who, again, while it's not guaranteed, is going to have to prove himself in spring training in particular. And he wants to be a guy that the Red Sox are going to rely on at the major league level. So there's also Tanner Houck, who's going to the 60-day IL. Likely isn't going to be ready to pitch until towards the end of 2026, or maybe not even until 2027. So he won't really be an immediate factor right now. But when he does come back, he'll definitely probably be a guy that the Red Sox most likely want to stick back into the rotation. So we'll have to keep an eye on that because later on in the summer, if he's getting to the point where it looks like he could come back, the Red Sox will have to make some decisions there. But he is technically still on the roster. He'll just be placed on the 60-day IL. And then Tyler Samaniego is another interesting pitcher to think about as well. So this was a guy that I am really intrigued by too, because he was also somebody who came over in that trade with Johan Oviedo when they traded the password to the Pirates. He's not yet cracked a major league roster, but his status as a lefty arm with a 98 mile per hour fastball on a roster full of guys that don't exactly have a lot of lefties in the bullpen right now, he could be a guy that they consider if he pitches well. So that is definitely interesting. So he could be cracking the team going into 2026. Also, there's the fact that the Red Sox traded for him knowing they would have to carry him on the 40-man roster because Pittsburgh protected him from the Rule 5 draft. So that means that he would be on the roster regardless. So we don't really know how good he's going to be, but because he has relief experience and he's a lefty, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of him potentially fighting for a spot as well. So we'll have to definitely see more of him to really know for sure. But Tyler Uberstein, another pitcher who's intriguing as well. This is a guy that has been in the Red Sox system, and he was selected from AAA Worcester at the end of 2025 in November at some point. He was acquired via the draft in 2021, round 19, and he's just been slowly continuing to develop, and the Red Sox believe that he's a guy who could make an impact. He's actually really inspirational, his story. He didn't receive any scholarship offers coming out of high school, so he joined the club baseball team at Southern California, and then ended up trying out for the varsity team during his sophomore season and practiced with the team until being cut before the season. Ended up continuing to work on his game and refine his mechanics, and transferred to Northwestern in order to continue pursuing a baseball career. Ended up working out for him. He participated in the MLB Draft League following the conclusion of his 2021 college season, and participated in the Fall Performance Program in 2021 before he unfortunately underwent Tommy John surgery on June 14th, 2023. So this guy's been through a lot, and it really shows perseverance, and it shows if you have a dream of playing Major League Baseball, you work for it, and it could happen. So his fastball averages 92 miles per hour, 92 to 94 in that range, and tops out at 95, and he throws from a low 3/4 arm slot. His velocity has returned at pretty much the same level as it was pre-Tommy John surgery, which is really good. He also throws a slider, changeup, cutter, and curveball. So he has a strong arsenal, which is something the Red Sox can work with, and he's somebody that they're really excited about. So will he crack the opening day roster? Maybe not, but definitely another player to keep in mind as the Red Sox continue to navigate what should be an exciting roster going into the 2026 season. And coming up, what does the position player group look like? That's something that we're all wondering. The winter games are officially here. And if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast, speed skating races decided by inches, FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. I love FanDuel because it's a great way to make lots of money while also being creative and betting on a lot of different sports. So if that's something that sounds appealing to you, make sure that you download the app, because you never know. It could change your life. And if it does, you can thank me later. So make sure you download the FanDuel app today. As we look at the Boston Red Sox 40-man roster as spring training approaches here, we're looking at potential options of guys who can make the roster. And I know when I was going over the pitching, I mentioned some names that haven't been talked about much, maybe even if at all. But the idea is to paint a big picture for you of who's actually on the 40-man roster. So then if some of these players get considered for the major league team, you could say, oh, okay, yeah, I am familiar with that name a little bit. And it all goes back to the overarching theme of the fact that the Red Sox wanted depth. And that's clearly what they were targeting and aiming for as they focus their offseason efforts on improving the team. And now that they have options, that's what they really were striving to do. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how things do play out a lot with this roster. And when I'm looking at the pitching, I'm also looking at the position player group, who is going to contribute in that regard. So from a catching perspective, Carlos Narváez and Connor Wong will be the 1 and 2 catchers, presumably with Narváez as the 1 and then Connor Wong behind him as the backup catcher. So that's how things will likely go there. The Red Sox do have a bunch of catching depth in the minor league system. And that's something that they also have been working to continue to improve on over the course of the offseason, is just adding more catching options into the mix. And that's something that they definitely, I'm sure, will be considering along the way. And if one of their catchers gets hurt, they definitely have a lot of options to pull from as the next man up. So that's an important thing to note here too, but those will be the catchers to start the season. From an infield perspective, you have Christian Campbell. This is an interesting one. He's on the 40-man roster, but the Red Sox are kind of in limbo with him, not really knowing if there's a spot for him. And as of right now, there doesn't really feel like there's a spot for him on the opening day roster because they have all these outfielders. The infield feels a little bit more complete now, so there isn't really a spot for him. So most likely Christian Campbell is going to be in Worcester to start the season, and the question is going to be, at what point do they feel like he's ready to be called up to the majors to contribute? And if it doesn't get to that point, or say their infielders and their outfielders are healthy, then it becomes a question of, do they eventually move on from Christian Campbell if they don't see him as a future piece in that roster? So that'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. Or do they move another outfielder at some point to make room for him? All questions that I'm continuing to ask, but I'm going to assume that he's starting the season in Worcester. Tristan Casas won't be ready from injury yet to start the season, but he should be ready at some point in the first couple months of the season to come back. And my question is going to be then, what type of role are they going to use him in? Is he going to be a platoon first base option with Willson Contreras, or would they rather keep Willson Contreras as the everyday first baseman and then have Tristan Casas maybe be more of a DH and kind of rotate through the DH role? That's a question that we're going to be looking at upon his return, is, do they feel like they want to see him play more first base, or do they like him better as a DH? So I'm going to be wondering about that when he comes back as well. Obviously, I mentioned Willson Contreras, one of their big offseason acquisitions, likely will be the everyday first baseman to start the season. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he contributes. One of the most consistent hitters in baseball over the last few seasons. So hopefully that's good news for the Red Sox. And that means that he's going to be able to contribute at a high level. Caleb Duran, who the Red Sox just acquired via trade with the Brewers, either a second baseman or a third baseman. To me, it feels like a no-brainer that he should be playing second base. He has the frame for second, and Marcelo Meyer has a frame that's more built for third base. And to me, Marcelo's better defensively at third base than second. So there's also Marcelo Meyer, who should be the opening day third baseman with Caleb Duran at second base. Alex Cora did mention in a press conference the other day that they see Caleb Duran as an everyday player. So that likely means that he will be either the everyday second baseman or third baseman. Again, I think he should be playing second with Marcelo playing third. Then you have Trevor Story at shortstop. Pretty obvious choice, a guy who's going to be manning that part of the infield. And I'm really excited to see how that plays out. Hopefully he has a season like he had in 2025. We're definitely going to need that offensive production from him. So I'm hoping for the best there when it comes to Trevor Story and him being able to step up. In terms of rounding out the infield, they also have Romy Gonzalez and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, two guys who will be used as kind of utility platoon options. Maybe Romy Gonzalez gets a lot of reps against left-handed pitching because he hits really well against lefties. So I'm going to be interested in that as well, and seeing if the Red Sox utilize him a lot more when there's a lefty on the mound and they take out maybe Marcelo or Duran from the lineup on those days. And then IKF's a good player to have around. He's a good defender, not the best at the plate, but he provides good locker room leadership. And that's something that really drew the Red Sox to bringing him in. So another utility player, won't be an everyday guy, but will be probably good to have around. Mickey Gasper, who the Red Sox picked back with the Red Sox organization. He's a guy who likely will be in AAA because there isn't really an option for him right now on the major league team. But if somebody gets hurt, he could step in and fill that role. So he's probably one of those next man up type of guys, but likely will be in AAA to start the season. Nate Eaton, who can play both in the infield and in the outfield. There's some flexibility there. He played a lot of third base in 2025. He also spent time in the outfield. So there's flexibility as well. That's another guy who they could utilize in the infield if need be, as well as Nick Sogard, Anthony Siegler, and Andrew Monasterio. Monasterio and Siegler are both guys they also got in that Caleb Durbin trade, more infield depth options that they likely will keep in mind, who will be playing in AAA but could be called up if there's an injury again. So I'm looking at those two to be guys who can contribute. And then there's Nick Sogard, obviously, who we saw a lot of in 2025 because he got more opportunities due to injury. So he could get opportunities as well again due to injury this year, if that were to be the case. There's also Sung-Chae Cheng, and this is a guy that the Red Sox actually picked up recently on waivers. He's been DFA'd 4 different times this winter by the Pirates, Rays, Mets, and Nationals. So he's kind of been all around this winter. He's only played in 3 games in the majors and took 7 at-bats. So really can't decipher much of him at all. This is just a pure depth move. A guy who likely is going to be just a pure depth piece if they really get to the point where they have too many injuries and they need to bring somebody else in. Then he could be called up, but likely won't see much of him. So from an infield standpoint, there you have it. And then you have your outfielders of Wilyer Abreu, Roman Anthony, Jarren Duran, Cedar Rafaela, and Masataka Yoshida. That's a good mix of guys. Presumably, Wilyer Abreu will be the everyday right fielder. The Red Sox already have said he'll be taking at-bats against both righties and lefties. So he'll likely be an everyday player. Same with Cedar Rafaela, who will likely be in center field every day. And then you have Jarren Duran, Roman Anthony, and Masataka Yoshida. My guess is that they'll have Roman Anthony in left field and then Jarren Duran DH and maybe split the DH role with Yoshida. There doesn't really feel like there's another option right now if they were to keep all these guys on the roster and not trade one of them. So in that regard, Yoshida could be a bench DH / outfielder. It's hard to swallow the pill of having Yoshida on the bench with how much they're spending on him. He's kind of in limbo right now. I don't really know what role he's going to be taking on in 2026. But if the Red Sox want to involve him in some capacity, maybe he platoon DHs with Jarren Duran. So the outfield situation is going to be interesting. But there you have it. There's the 40-man roster. One big glaring weakness still is the lack of power in this Red Sox lineup. If they can get one more bat to add to this lineup who can hit a lot of home runs, that to me would feel like this is a very strong roster going into 2026. I just feel like with their lack of power, sometimes you do need to be able to have those home run heavy hitters. If they're able to acquire one of those this offseason, then I would say this was a really solid offseason, and you can't get much better than that. So looking forward to seeing if any other moves get made. But thank you so much for tuning in, as always, to Locked On Red Sox. Make sure you continue to tune in Monday through Friday for new episodes. You can find me on social media at Gabby Maljanian on Twitter and at Gabby_Maljanian10 on Instagram. You can also find the show on Twitter at LO_Red Sox. So make sure you are following me there. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Red Sox ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to LockedOnRedSox.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Baseball as you gear up for the MLB season. Thank you so much, as always. Keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.